Go.
Hey Christian, how are you? All right, so I'm ready for my little interview. Miss Bachiller is recording, so she's gonna remind me about the questions, all right?
What was life like growing up in Chile?
All right, so I was born in 1974 in April, so that was some months after the coup d'etat. So I was born during dictatorship. My family was big supportive of the dictator, for you to understand this, have to understand that more than half of the population were looking for a change. We had for 3 years a Marxist president who, if you remember, had been elected democratically, and so but of course this is during Cold War, and people were not very happy with the system that necessarily was not working, especially because the United States have been supporting an embargo, and so people were facing a lot of lack of food, having to line up for just getting the basics, and there were a lot of protests, transportation, and so it was chaotic, and people wanted a change. So in September 11th, 1973, when the coup happened, there were a lot of celebration in the streets, and my family were celebrating. So for me, growing up during this dictatorship was something normal, and to have Pinochet as a dictator for 16 years was pretty much having a big dad to take care of the country. I never saw anything wrong, even when there are a lot of people that they were saying that there were people being killed or people being missing or exiled. My dad always made me believe that it was just what communists deserved, and how it had to be controlled. So I grew up always defending this. When at the end of the regime, when funny enough Pinochet called for plebiscito, how you say plebiscito? How you say plebiscito when you have to vote yes or no? Well, like. So he called people to vote and kind of make it democratic, and he was expecting to get big support from people. He democratically was said no, so people voted against him. So that marked the change to and going back to democracy. And for me, specifically being 17, I didn't understand exactly what was going to happen. The big threat was always to tell people that we were going to go back to communist times, and it was all going to be very awful, and we will go back to live like in Cuba, and that was always the threat that Pinochet would do. So little by little we started seeing that it wasn't like that, and we started seeing how life was actually better. I realized that for 16 years we never saw concerts, like rock concerts, because people wouldn't go, like famous rockers wouldn't go to a country that was under the dictatorship. We learned that other peoples we have like other things, although something important that I need to highlight here, that Pinochet, being a dictator from the right, he was unusually a capitalistic dictator, so we had a lot of things, and Chile actually cannot deny that we owe to Pinochet's system that was very open market. We had a very solid economy, and nowadays is one of the strongest in Latin America, and mostly because of what he did. So that's why it was always conflictive. Of course, middle class and higher classes were always the big supporters of them, while the working class were not very happy because of capitalism. You have a lot of social classes. Anyways, at the end of all that, and when I started traveling, I started to understand that dictatorships are not good, either side. So I changed my views, and I'm not a supporter of Pinochet anymore, although my dad still is. And there is a big, I would say, 10% of population in Chile that still kind of misses Pinochet or someone like him because he's dead. So, but I think that we learned that, and especially after he was out, and it took some time for him to go out because he kind of helped for democracy to come back, but at the same time, he kept himself as the general in charge of the military forces. So anyways, we learned that there are a lot of people who were killed. There were discoveries of many people being buried in the desert. And so we understood what he had been doing, and even like also something that he never accepted, but there were a lot of corruption about money that he did. So, did I miss any question?
What were you allowed to do or not allowed to do? Like, how did it affect your day-to-day life?
Nothing. Like, I had the happiest life. I never realized that I was missing anything. So I went to school. I never saw military forces in the streets. I had everything I wanted. If we wanted to go buy something, we had it. The only thing I can tell you is the music, that it was just like, we wouldn't have like rock concerts, but we could listen to the music that we wanted. There was a big influence of English music, or music in English. The thing that older people at the time would tell you is, of course, there was a repression of ideas. Education was very controlled by the Ministry of Education or the Secretary of Education, and they were controlled into a curriculum that was very academic. That means like students were not supposed to be working on like debates or thinking so much. There were some books that were forbidden, movies that definitely we couldn't watch. So there was a big control of that. Singers that were exiled just because they were singing protest songs, and things like that. Of course, the news, the press there was only one channel, and the press was controlled by the government, and so a lot of freedom of expression was not something that we enjoyed, but we didn't know. So, all right, that's it. Bye, Christine.